The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine.
You know, when I have a large project at home, sometimes it makes sense to do it by myself. At other times, I actually save money in the long term and have a much better solution if I use an expert. It's really not that much different with church planting. Church planters who focus on building their core team and actually planting the church and partner with portability experts like Portable Church Industries hit the ground running. Yes, you may have to raise more funds up front, but let me tell you something. If I could go back in a time machine and do one thing different in all the churches that I planted, I would go back and have invested that money in Portable Church and all of the super cool kit that they give you to make the volunteers and their lives much, much easier. Trust me, your volunteers will feel invested in, and they're going to give you more of what they got. And that time where people are setting up is going to be a time where it sets the atmosphere for you to thrive. If you're thinking about launching in the next 6 to 36 months, we encourage you to check them out at portablechurch.com.
I'm not only the heckler president, I'm also a client.
Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones.
And you were listening to episode 250. 250 of the Church Planter Podcast. We've already been threatened.
Go Foghorn, Pete.
Foghorn. You know what I don't have on here? I should have a cha-ching, and I don't have one.
Oh, man.
Here's what I do have. What? Almost just as good.
It's kind of the battle cry of this podcast.
It kind of is. So if you are just joining us, you're 250 episodes behind, but that's all right because we got coolness coming.
No, hey, they're 249 episodes behind, but happy podversary anyways.
Well, you know, the cool thing is we can't really discuss certain things that are in the works because the ink hasn't been finalized yet. But we got some cool things coming down the pipe, which are going to mean like really cool things for this podcast. I believe.
Yeah, it might be ready by 275.
At the rate we're going.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
But it's going to give us.
We do have big things on the work.
It'll give us international exposure.
Oh, I was thinking I would like that kind of respect.
Would you like some toast?
I'm into my orders with me. I would like to have some toast.
So if this is your first time joining us, then what you need to understand is this is a little time that we like to call Smack Talk. This is where Peyton and I get to catch up, and fortunately for you, we haven't talked in like a week, so we got all kinds of good stuff. And then
absolutely,
and then we get into the good stuff, the church planting stuff. So Peyton, why don't you tell them what is today's topic anyway?
Today's topic are the questions you need to be asking. Well, I guess it's today's topic is, but I was going with like questions. So put the pronouns and all that stuff mix up, but it is. What are the questions? It's grammar, English. What are the questions you should be? This is not an afternoon podcast, Pete.
It's not, but you know what? You're not in your usual setup, which is why your voice isn't as milky smooth as it normally is.
I know. So, okay, what are the questions I should be asking before I team up with somebody to church plant? What things do I need to know? Because we know that Paul planted in teams, and team planting is the most effective way to do it. But what questions do I need to be asking? That was a question that came up on the Voxer group in the Bible Inner Circle.
Yeah. And one thing we always like to give you are helpful tips and ideas of how you yourself can make some money to help you with your church plant. And here's just one more idea for you.
I made my money the old-fashioned way. I got run over by a Lexus.
Oh, I love that one. Thank you to Travis Sinks for sharing that little number with us. So we'll be getting to that topic in a few minutes. But before then, Mr. Jones, you got anything you want to share with us? Because I got all kinds of stuff I want to share.
Well, no, but being this is episode 250, I wanted to be super professional. But being that I'm in the apartment and not in the house, can you hear my eggs boiling in the background?
Is that a euphemism? No, I cannot.
Oh, sometimes, if I've eaten the wrong food, eggs are a-boiling. Eggs, they be a-boiling. I should have been a sound clip.
So are you making the eggs yourself?
Well, I'm boiling. When Andrew leaves, I'm on my own.
So what do you got to do? Like get up and go
cook.
get the eggs in the middle of our recording?
Probably.
What?
I didn't think this one through.
You really didn't think this through. You can't leave them boiling for an hour.
5 feet. That's why I'm asking if you can hear it. I'm at the kitchen table with my computer with an absolute useless. I got the Procast SST mic tech. If you ever wonder, hey, how does Peyton get his voice so silky smooth?
Right now you're just using an Apple headset.
I'm using the Apple because I hooked it up and couldn't figure out how to work it. So, technical help is not my thing, which kind of lends itself to a little stroll down memory lane for episode 250, which was one of the first things you said to me when we decided we work together. Oh, great, you're not a techie. Great, yeah. I'm stuck with another creative person. Why does this always happen to me? Why, God, why?
They're awful.
I had to talk off the ledge.
You non-techie people are awful to deal with.
We do things like boil eggs right when we're starting a podcast.
I know.
5 feet away from ourselves. That's the kind of stuff we do. Amateurs.
So, if you've been listening to the podcast.
If you're new, let us apologize for ourselves again.
If you've been listening to the podcast, you heard that I had a new little toy that was coming in real recently. I don't remember if we talked about that I got my my gun.
We did. We talk about all your toys. We talk about your underwear. We talk about your car, your charger, and now we're going to talk about your gun because
we're talking about the gun.
He gets toys. That's what we talk about,
and that's all I care about. So I am like in this mode.
Oh, we talk about your 3D movies, your 100-inch TV. I mean, it's like if you go to the past 249 episodes, you're going to be like Pete's like Tom Vu. These are my toys.
You're going to be like, I know more about Pete, his underwear, and the things he does for fun than I do my own best friend. I'm everyone's best friend. That's a great place.
I picture you hopping in your charger in your underwear on your way to the gun range. With a gun over your shoulder. That's what I see.
Here's the deal, guys. I recently bought a gun, often referred to as a long gun or a rifle. Some might call it a 5.56. I should have wore my 5.56 hat for you. It's got 5.56.
Dude, you're going hardcore into this.
Yeah, Jamie was like, "Oh, I thought you just bought the hat because you liked it." I'm like, "No, that's the type of bullets my gun takes. 5.56." Right. So,
I wouldn't even know what that means. Like if we walk, as I've, told to the podcast audience out here, I'm totally exposed. I'm a sitting duck. Come get me. If you want to take me and take over my beautiful life, you can. You can pry it from my cold dead fingers because I have nothing.
Yeah. So the 5.56, it's the caliber of bullet that the AR-15 takes, and that's what I got is an AR-15. And it is fun. So this last weekend, right? Thanksgiving was last week. Saturday, we fly home. We had to come home on Saturday. No lie, because Sunday, Petey was going to the gun show.
Pete, you do realize that when Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," he wasn't talking about a type of firearm, right?
As I like to explain to my pastor yesterday after church, there are people at the gun show that need neighboring. His whole message was on neighboring, and I'm like, I'm going to go be a neighbor to the people at the gun show. They are neglected people. I neglect them no more. I go to them. I go to their turf. Which, by the way,
you live really close to Orange County. I would imagine that almost all of those guys were right-wing Republican pastors in that shooting
They
range.
were all
with you.
pastors.
I've been looking on Instagram. I see all these pastors like, hey, I'm off shooting guns. And I'm like, that must be a thing right now. Used to be golf. Now it's like the firing range.
We see that you actually bring up a funny point. Okay, I have one of those really highly addictive personalities. Part of the reason, no, right? Part of the reason why I've never done golf, there's two main reasons. Number one, it's played outdoors in the sun. I hate the sun. But number two, I was always like, okay, that's not a good sport for me because those guys, they end up buying like every little toy and trinket there is to improve their game by like one stroke. And I'm like, that to me would be like a money black hole. I did not realize that the whole gun thing was going to be the same thing. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, I'm pretty new to the gun world, meaning I've had guns, but I've had a couple of long guns for years and I've literally never taken them. They were my grandfather's. They were left to me before I got on this recent gun kick. The last time I went to the gun range, I was 14.
Wow.
I know. So it's been a while, right? So I don't consider myself a gun nut, but I am rapidly becoming one as I have discovered.
So if there was a place where you could go and pretend to be a ninja, like throw knives
found it.
And throwing what?
Oh yeah.
Why aren't we going there? Like I'll come down like no joke within the next 2 weeks.
There's a place in between. I know this because of the gun show. I was talking to
dude.
I was talking to one of the people who has a booth there, and because I'm all about the training because I didn't grow up with guns, so I'm like, dude, I want to take every course there is, even the remedial ones.
Wait, let me just say this, guys. If you're listening, you're new here. Hi, I'm new here. Listen.
I told him Smack Talk.
We did say the topic, but Smack Talk, I don't think we really said that Smack Talk we screw around for a bit.
I don't care.
So
they can figure it out. And if they leave us, they were never meant to be with us.
Yeah,
Our 250 strong.
See this attitude that Pete has now that he's packing heat? I don't care. I don't care about them.
The problem is I always had that
podcast.
attitude. I just had no way to back it up. That was my problem.
Back off, man. What's that?
I always had that attitude. I just had no way to back it up.
You did, but I still got to take it out of you, man.
No, there's a place in between Vegas and Pahrump where it's like their facility is better than the military's facility, and they got classes for everything. I mean, knife throwing, you name it, they got it. And the lady's
I have to go to a place called Pahrump.
No, it's halfway in between. No, it's Vegas too far away, and that's what I told her. I'm like, oh, look, I can't go there. I go,
start one.
I got 2 kids and a wife. I mean, and she goes, how old are the kids? I go,
it's rad.
6 and 2. She goes, we've got classes starting at 5. And I'm like, oh my gosh. There's like Luke. Could you imagine Luke with a gun? That's just bad news.
Do you use like a German word? Like my friend used to have Dobermans, and if you use this German word, it attacks. Can you do that with your kids? It's like the Manchurian Candidate for toddlers.
That'd be awesome.
Oh my gosh, dude. So seriously though, why do they not? You know how much money you would make if you're like ninja school and
they have it. They have all that stuff.
But in Pahrump or halfway.
Yeah, well, that's the problem because, like, I was talking to this one gunsmith there, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a gunsmith." I go, "Oh yeah, where are you located?" Because I'm thinking I got these long guns that I want to take to a gunsmith before I go out and fire them. And then he goes, I'm out in Riverside. And he goes, and if you come out to Riverside, you better bring a gun with you. I kid you not.
What?
I kid you not, man. He was just like, don't come out to Riverside unless you got a gun.
That's hilarious, man.
I'm telling you, the gun people at the gun show, they are my people. I fit in there.
They're all walking around, though, like with this fantasy that they're going to get jumped in, but I got my lucky sidearm.
They're not walking around worried about it. I'll tell you that. They packing. There's so many guns there. Packing.
They were worried about it, which is why they started.
I'm just saying it was so.
They're a paranoid bunch. You got to admit, they are a paranoid bunch of people, and it is so easy to get sucked into that paranoia.
I don't know that they're paranoid because I don't think that there's anything to be paranoid about, and yet at the same time, people are really out to get them. So it's not really paranoia. It's just.
Hey, you always make fun of me when I'm paranoid.
It's just being
people are out to get me.
properly prepped. That's all they are. Properly prepped. They are ready for anything that should come to. Look, I've been buying all kinds of gizmos and gadgets to put on my gun. Like, I'm like, ooh, flashlight. I can stick a flashlight. Like, why do I need a flashlight on my gun?
You guys are going to hear that Peyton Jones got shot accidentally by Pete Mitchell because I went over to his house and we were messing around just like two teenage kids.
It won't be accidental.
You can take all the. You guys heard it here. Pete's going to take all the proceeds from Church Planter Podcast. That's his secret.
Oh my gosh, dude! I was like, so I'm going shooting tomorrow with Jimbo.
Nice.
Yeah, we're gonna do a podcast at the gun range.
See, this is what's going to happen now, though. Now that you have guns and I don't, it's like you're going to get new best friends.
Oh, totally. Oh, I'm already on my way.
See, we just had the podcast before, but now it's like there's like this other woman, and she shoots 5.56 bullets.
Ooh, that's hot.
And I can't compete with her.
You really can't. Nope.
No.
No. I was actually I'm at the gun show and I'm like, first of all, it's bad when you go to the bank and just take out a bunch of cash because you don't want the government knowing what you're buying. So like it's all cash transactions. I'm like, I was ready, man. I was going to get what's called an 80%, man. I'm like looking at everything. I'm like, ooh, should I get myself a 308? Should I get myself an 1895, 4570? What should I get? Like these are the thoughts that are running through my head. I'm telling you, I got sucked into the gun world like that.
Oh yeah, you did.
I got sucked in.
That's what happens, dude. It's cool though. Like in all honesty, like for me, the thought, I was raised in a military family, like 3 generations back. My brother just retired from combat infantry. And, I have no issue with, joining the military or whatever, but I'm not a killer. Like it's not something that, but so guns kind of weirded me out. Plus my best friend, when I got back, he shot himself. And to this day, I still think, he was in a bad place, but he'd still be here.
Yeah.
And so I'm not anti-gun at all. Please understand me. It's just for me. I always think, what if I get in a bad place one day? And
see, I don't worry about that. Because that's just not how I'm built. But no, I'm totally with you. Like I was telling this to someone, like how a lot of guys are like, yeah, go ahead and try and break into my house. You'll see what happens if you do. Totally not my perspective.
Oh, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. But it's cool. Like guns are just cool. Like just being able to, when I was a kid,
they're just toys.
I was in Boy Scouts, and this is a true story. This is bad, but when I was a kid, we went out to Calico and we shot in the Boy Scouts. We shot 22s and shotguns and everything. And yes, a kid did shoot himself on accident in the leg. And, you hear that, I think, gosh, isn't that dangerous? Well, yes, it was. And that was the last time we did it. But it was like a father-son thing. Like you were out with and he was loading the gun, had it pointed at himself, just his dad wasn't paying attention. And yes, he shot himself in the leg, at point blank, boom. And, but what I was going to say is it was fun, man. I had so much fun. And then over the years, I'll go out with my buddies sometimes, particularly when I was a missionary. I come back and I had a buddy. He's what I call my most macho friend. You'll be glad to know, Pete. He also was a ginger. You might know him. Keith. Do you know Keith over at Refuge Pennington?
All of us gingers know each other. Yeah, that's how it works.
It's like when people in VWs wave to each other on the freeway. And so anyways, he would be like, hey, you want to go shooting? He had everything. And because he was raised in Alaska. Oh. So that was just a way of life for them. And
totally.
Like he was a commercial salmon fisher. I mean, dude was rad. Rebuilt his own house by hand. Had a Stingray that he restored himself. He was hardcore into anything macho.
I just want to go on the record to say that I don't actually build anything. I just buy it.
Yeah. No, well, he did both. But anyways.
That's more manly than me. That's all I'm
going to say. We would go shoot. But again, the whole time I'd be there, I'd be thinking, this would be so much cooler if we could do ninja stuff. Right? So I'm just saying.
I'm taking there. Okay. So I joined a gun range. Like that's how much I got into it. I plunked down the $500 and I'm like, I'm a member for the next year. And, they have, do you need
I have to take my eggs off the boil. Hold on. Continue your story. I'm right here. You just paused, didn't you?
I totally did. I totally did.
You know it was coming. I was just waiting for you to talk.
I got a story to tell you. It is not for the listeners alone.
I suppose. Yeah, all right. I would have figured it out. I would have picked up the context. Go ahead.
No, I don't remember what I was going to say. Other than
I was trying to see if the cord would stretch that 5 feet, but no, it only stretches about 2.
No, so I joined a gun range, and they've got 3 2-day classes for your AR-15, right? Because the AR-15 is such a popular rifle. I mean, it is incredibly popular. And I'm like, okay, I got to, because I don't know enough. Like, I want all of the classes. I want the remedial classes. I want here's how you field strip your weapon. Here's how you clean it. I want all of them because I don't know enough. You know, my dad, who grew up with guns, married a woman who was like anti-gun. And so that makes him anti-gun. Well, he's not anti-gun, but you know, like I said, 14 was the last time I went shooting. I was 14 years old. So, and before that, I don't think I probably ever went. And, I just, long and the story short of it here is they have, as part of this, these 2-day courses, they get to do all the ninja stuff. Like he trains you on everything. Like I just finished watching The Punisher on Netflix.
Yeah.
I could be just as good as that guy after these classes. No doubt.
You know, we should do that though. We should seriously start a ninja daycare and train young children how to become lethal weapons of mass destruction.
Dude, I will say this, you know, what was really funny is I'm at the gun range last week. Only got to go in twice last week. So, you know, and as I'm leaving, this old guy who'd been, shooting real near me, he goes, well, now I know my CCW weapon works. And CCW is your concealed carry weapon. So he's permitted. I'm like, oh, so, I always ask whenever I hear someone who's got a CCW, I'm like, hey, what was your excuse? Right? Cause you have to have an excuse to have a concealed carry permit.
Right.
And, he's like, well, I'm a retired police officer. And I kid you not, for the next 25 minutes, I'm standing by my car as he's telling me, as he called it, war story after war story. And the first thought that ran through my head was, all right, God, is this why you got me here? I mean, am I supposed to meet these people here? And, let's get to know some people here. And who knows? Cause it honestly to me was like, I don't think he's got a lot of people to talk to. I really felt that way. I was like, for this guy to like start unloading on a stranger for 25 minutes, war story after war story, I'm like, okay, I don't think he's got a lot of people to talk to. So
that's rad, man.
Yeah. So that's my new mission field. My mission field is the gun range, the gun peeps.
Did you tell him that, I think I know some of those people from Refuge Long Beach?
No, he was up in LA and he retired 22 years ago. So he's been retired.
Yeah, dude, that's rad. That's good.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, it's been fun, man. I'm chomping at the bit to go tomorrow. I got my Amazon shopping cart filled with all these gun supplies. And I will say this, when you're carrying 1,000 rounds of 5.56 out of the gun show, that thing is so stinking heavy. It has to be like, I don't know, 50 pounds or something.
Wow.
And it's like, no, it can't be 50 pounds, but it's like, you know how it's at the Orange County Fairgrounds. So you know how big that is. Wow. And you're like carrying that all the way back to your car.
What was the coolest thing that you saw there? Other than the ninja stuff, like what was the thing you're like, did you see like, was anyone shooting like crossbows? Or?
Yeah, they had crossbows there. Yeah.
That's just cool stuff.
See, crossbows, I'm not into the crossbows.
Yeah.
I'm into.
See, now I'd be into that. I'd be into a crossbow.
Well, what was cool for me is I did find a gun dealer. His name is Ed. He's in the city of Orange, and I really like this guy. And I think he's going to be my gun dealer. I think I'm going to be able to develop a relationship with my gun dealer.
It's like eHarmony for people who shoot people.
Dude, I will say this. The guys who are in the Bivo Inner Circle are going to hear some great information on sales and marketing, because that's the lens at which I look through the world, sales and marketing. And And so I had to record an audio that's going on this next month's Bible Inner Circle hard drive that we ship out to everyone who's in the Bible Inner Circle, which you can find all about at BibleInnerCircle.com. And every single person that I talked to there was a horrid salesman. Like, just did not know how to close a sale. I literally came there with a pocket full of cash looking to buy more guns, and none of them could take me down. They just didn't know how. Oh, by the way,
give me what they did.
Well, they first of all, I'm offering up buying question after buying question, and never did they go, so this makes sense to me. Would it make sense to you? Nothing like the transition to go from you've been asking me buying questions to give me your money. And I'm like, seriously, I'm not going to just give you guys my money when you're not even working for it. And I was giving them all kinds of marketing ideas because I'm like, why don't you guys do this? Why don't you guys do that? And this one guy, anyway, it'll be on the hard drive for everybody who gets that in the Bible Inner Circle. Great ideas that they can take and implement in their businesses and the businesses of their clients. Find all about it at BibleInnerCircle.com. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share. It was my gun stories.
We should probably get into our topic, which I have a commercial.
Are you trying to say?
Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
Pretty much. But before we do that, let me tell you a word from another sponsor, which, by the way, you can find at corporateboxoffice.com/theater-church.
And theater is spelled R-E.
It's spelled Theatre. So that is corporateboxoffice.com, theater, R-E-church. So here's the deal. Talking with church planners, they're always looking for a place to meet. Now, you can meet in a school, you can meet in a community center, or you can meet in a place where people already traffic. So Regal Corporate Box Office reaches out to church planners. They have a staff of 4 church planners, actually, or previous church planners who are able to help you out. They know exactly what you're dealing with, and they want to help you get started using the church space on a Sunday morning when they're not showing films. And that way you get a very natural transition, even for your own people who are like, hey, I might even be able to meet some friends here and say, hey, why don't we meet for church beforehand? So again, that was corporateboxoffice.com/theater. That's spelled Theatre-church.
Love it. I love it. Doc, can you kick us off?
Great Scott! It's time for this week's topic.
Indeed it is. So the question is, hey, what conversations should I have? So let's tell a little story. Guy says, hey, I've been talking with this guy. He's pretty cool. He and I share the same vision for the city. We want to reach a church. And he said, hey, why don't you come along and help me with this church plant? And a lot of times we'll get church planners where they get cold feet or they think, I don't really have the goods to plant. And they'll team up with somebody who, might just be better at faking that they're ready to do it than they actually are. I'll tell you up front, just straight up, nobody's ready ever to plant a church. It's like saying you're ready to have another kid or ready to be a parent or ready to get married. You're never really ready for that. It's all of the unknowns and the twists and turns and the fears. And I don't got this, never done this before. So a lot of times what people do, kind of like in the same way that they break off the engagement or, they freak out right before they're going to have a kid and, suddenly get a mohawk or buy a motorcycle or whatever it is. Men do strange things. It's the same thing with the church plant. What guys will often do is they'll go, I'm just going to join with so-and-so, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, particularly if you've never planted a church. I actually think it's ideal. The way that I train church planners in New Breed, back when I was doing that full time, I would take church planners with me to plant because it's all fine to say, hey, we'll do these classes or courses or whatever. And in today's ministerial world, we still have this thing where it's all about the information that you know. It is very little about what you do. And I'm more a believer in on-the-job training. This podcast is never meant to replace you actually getting out there and doing stuff and risking and failing and succeeding. You have to do something eventually. So, but that's how I would do it, is I would take people out there. And so, what would happen is often it would be a case of, hey, come with me and we'll plant together, and I will be training wheels for you. I didn't need anyone to teach me how to church plant. It's just, I knew that these guys would learn best if a lot of the pressure were taken off of them. But anyways, that said, sometimes it's fear that motivates you to team up with someone else. Sometimes it's just the right thing. You really do need somebody to train you. So when I look at the New Testament, you see Paul training Timothy and the other guys, and he was kind of that to them. He was their training wheels. So, and then eventually he could send them off to ride the bike. But there are questions, if you're going to team up with someone, that you need to ask. And I would say over the years, I've gotten pretty good. If a young guy comes to me, because I'll get calls now from church planners with North American Mission Board, and they'll call me up and say, hey, Peyton, going into this situation, you and I have talked to some of the same guys, Pete. One of the guys is bivocational, so he was like, hey, and he was going to New York City. And his question, he had a lot of questions, and I could right away spot, okay, this is the situation you're going into. These are the dangers I see. These are the things that you need to look out for. These are the questions you need to be asking before you get into that situation. Because once you partner with someone, it's kind of marriage. So if I were getting married, I would want to ask my wife things like, how many kids do you want? What do you see our life being like? Big house, small house. Do you want to work? Do you not want to work? There's all these questions that you got to ask. You got to ask about, what are your views on family? What do you feel about in-laws? And really a lot of it is observing. So what I told the recent planter was, you need to have many, many conversations, not one. So for example, what some of you guys will do is you'll hear these questions. You'll be like, okay, I'll make an appointment then, and I'll just shotgun blast this other leader and ask them all these questions, in a very clinical, sterile, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about this? That's not how you do it. In order to get to the bottom of these questions, you need to spend time. So what I told the planner was, you need lots and lots of dinners, lots of evenings with you and your spouse and the other leader and their spouse. And you need to be chatting through over multiple dinner conversations, multiple cafe meetups, whatever it is, times in each other's homes. You need to get to know these people, and you need to feel it out. The first question, there's a lot of questions. First thing I would want to ask is, how long are you seeing yourself being there? Is this a lifetime commitment? Is this it? Is this like, we're going to plant this church and this is all we see? Or is this more an issue of, hey, I'm going to do this for a time? And are they cool with that? Are they cool with, hey, I'm going to be gone in 2 years? So the first thing you want to work out is duration. What's the duration of this partnership?
Now,
for Paul,
you don't mind if I actually talk on the podcast, do you?
Not at all.
Okay, because I know we're into your part now.
We're not talking about guns anymore, but if you think you have something useful to contribute,
I don't actually.
I'm just teasing.
I just wanted to see if you'd let me talk. Go ahead, keep going.
No, go for it, man. I'm just, you know what it is? I'm looking at the time we have, and I know I only have 30 minutes, but we're good. We're good. I can get through this, no problem.
So here's my question. When you say what's the duration, are you talking about you, the partner, the team members? Like,
No, I'm really talking about like the elders. This isn't even a conversation about your core team. This is a conversation about you and another leader. In my model, it's elders, right? Because I see the 5 roles in Ephesians 4 as apostle, prophet, shepherd, evangelist, teacher. I see those as being elder roles. And so the question for me is, how long will we be serving as a team together, as a team leadership? And, one guy might say, hey, I'm only cool if you're in this for the long haul, which is kind of weird. So if someone said that to me, I'd be like, hey, let's read the Bible together. Let's read the New Testament. Let's look at how this thing works. But you need to know that going in. What are this person's views? Are they archaic? And by archaic, I mean, are they non-biblical? Are they more traditional views of church? I met with a leader this week who told me that he believes in I can't remember what the mileage was, that churches ought to only plant within like 20 to 40 miles of one another, so that there's no quote unquote competition. Well, that is so opposite of how I think. I don't care if you're on the next city block and I'm on this one. If I reach everyone on that city block, I'd be happy. And if you reach everyone on your city block, you should be happy, but that's, it's a perspective. And so what you're really looking for in this is, are our perspectives matched? If we're coming at this, Mac Lake, one of my mentors, always says that shared expectations, shared expectations eliminate shared frustrations. So if we understand the same thing together, we're not going to be frustrated. But if I go into a situation and we don't understand what this is we're doing, there's going to be lots of frustration. It's going to build up over time. And you're going to think, man, I wish we had talked this through before we were this far in. Oh,
yeah. So I got a little bit of experience here with partnerships, and I don't really know how much of this applies because we're talking about church, which is different. I don't care what anyone says. It's totally different, right? Your motivations are different. Everything's different. You're not out for money. At least let's hope you're not out for money. Especially if you're church plant where we tell you to church plant.
Yeah, you shouldn't be at all. Hey, there will be no money.
There will be no money. So I have had several really, really bad partnerships. Extremely bad. To the point where nowadays I still partner with people, but I go into it with my eyes wide open and a clear written, this is what we're agreeing to. And it doesn't mean that we like sign it or anything. There's no, for most of my partnerships, no like signed agreement, though some of them I do. But it does mean that it has been put down in an email, sent back and forth, and we're both totally on base. So I'll give you a great example. One of my first partnerships was with a really good friend of mine, and it blew up the friendship because I found that, one, in most key areas, we were too much alike. And so there wasn't enough complementary services. And it was kind of like, okay, what do I need you for? I'm already doing that. Like the whole thing was my idea. It was my everything. And he didn't have enough of anything else. It was like he was piggybacking on everything that I did. And it was kind of like, why are we doing this? But when we started to butt heads, that was a problem. And it was one of the reasons that to this day, I don't do normal 50-50 partnerships and anything. There always has to be a head, and there has to be someone willing to submit to the other. Yes. And my ego does not say I've got to be the head. In fact, like the way that you and I did it, it was like, okay, look, we're 50-50. However, if it has anything to do with theology, anything to do with doctrine, anything to do with basically the content side, you're the final voice, and I have to submit to whatever you want on that. Yeah. If it has to do with the business side, in the end, it'll be my choice if we were to butt heads. And it really makes for like very clear guidelines.
Yeah,
and every once in a while,
we've pulled that card with each other.
We have. Yeah, we've pulled it. Every once in a while, it'll be like, hey, you know what? We did agree. I'm the final voice. Okay, you're right. Boom.
Yeah.
But it's not like
Oklahoma.
But also, it's not like
First safe word.
It's not like you don't listen to the other. Like, one of the things that I always try to get people to understand who are new to business, and this only usually comes up with people who are brand new to business. So I could imagine, like, in a church plant, I'm brand new to church planting.
Yeah.
People who've been in business for a while and had partners, they get it when you're like, okay, who's submitting to who? Because they've been down that road just like I have. But I don't remember where I was going to go with that line. So it doesn't really matter.
You were saying that your ego does not, it's why you don't do 50-50. You want to know,
you
who's
got to listen to
who.
the other guy, because the way I look at it, that person has a vested interest in our success.
Right.
So even though I might have the final voice, I need to listen to what that person has to say. They're not going to chop off their own nose just to be like, hey, I think we should do this. It's like, listen to them. And maybe their idea is better than yours, or the direction they want to go is better than yours. And if it is, have the humility to go, dude, you're right. I'm going to go in that direction, because we're trying to get to that end goal. But it really, I have found that if, if you don't go into the relationship with those standards clearly defined,
yes,
it is really hard to go back later and go, hey, look, we've been working together for 6 months now, but I think we need to put in some guidelines here. Now, it's not to say that you can't do it. I'm just saying it's kind of difficult, because then people start to get hurt, because they're like, well, I saw myself as the thing that you see yourself as. And it can be
when you're talking team leadership, right? Particularly with elders, you're talking about equals, but at the same time, you bring up a point. First thing you said is if we're too similar. So on those elders, the reason for the plurality in the scripture is that you're not meant to all be teachers. So if I go into a team leadership and I can see that there's like 4 teachers or 3 teachers, I realize right away it's because they don't understand what biblical leadership is. They would bypass a prophetic leader or even an apostolic leader, because to today's system, which is so far off base from the New Testament, the teacher is the pastor. The guy who can preach well becomes the pastor. He becomes the senior leader. But that's not how it's supposed to work. So then when they're looking for leaders, they look for guys who can preach in the pulpit, where Ephesians blows that right out and says you got apostles, evangelists, these different guys. Now they're going to lead differently. But I don't want guys just like me, in the same way that you said you didn't want guys just like you. And then the other part is about the submitting. There is in leadership a mutual submission that goes on. However, someone must always lead the team.
Right.
So you have a team, which is a team leadership leading the church together. And you can say, well, Jesus is the senior pastor. Hopefully you are saying that. However, that does not negate the fact that there will be a team leader. So, for example, in the 12, because you got to back this up with scripture, in the 12, you have the teams. You have the team of 12, and then you have Jesus pouring specifically into James, Peter, and John. And Paul, when he comes to Jerusalem, writes in Galatians that I perceived that they were pillars. He lists those 3. What did he mean by pillars? He meant that they were leaders amongst the team. They were the first among equals. So when you say first among equals, it means that they are the servant leaders of that team. That doesn't mean they're the tiebreaker. It doesn't mean that. It's just someone has to take responsibility for the team itself. And so for me, when I'm planning, normally I'm that, but I quickly phase out of that. So you observe that happening. And I've done it every time I plan a church, which is I lead in the beginning, and I told Long Beach straight up, hey, I'm going to lead this at the beginning. Then my gifts are going to wane. Then someone else is going to come. Their gifts are going to wax, and it's time for me to go. And that's exactly how it works. So we have team leader at Refuge Long Beach. So, but also I might get called into a situation. I got called into a situation, and I did not pursue the consulting relationship with the team, but coach the individual. But had I come in, one of the first things I would have said was, you guys here are equals. And they were fighting through this whole, but we're equals thing. And they were equal in their roles as elders. They were not equal in their abilities as leaders. And so one of them was a seasoned veteran leader in ministry. The others were new. This was their first rodeo. And they kept playing the we're equals card with him. And they were trying to do everything by voting. So the first thing I said is, look, you can't do this by voting. But anyways, this is one of the questions I would ask is exactly what you said. Who's the lead? Who's going to lead the team? Are you the lead or am I the lead? And then the other thing is, what's the relationship? So I would have come into this situation and just laid down and said, what I perceive here, guys, is you two over there are Timothy's. He is a Paul. Yes, you were on the same team. Yes, you were equal as elders. However, you guys are Timothy's. You need to show the respect to him as a Paul because you need mentoring. He is your mentor in this situation. This is not a Paul and Barnabas where we are equals. We have equal experience. We are equal in capacity as leaders. So there's guys I serve with where I think, like when I served in Pillar, Jeff came on board. Jeff knew things that I could never hope to learn on my own because of his experience in supernatural ministry. He's very grounded, but I had been there when miracles were done prior to that, but I had never laid hands on someone and seen him healed. Jeff did that regularly. So it was like, well, we're equals, but on these things, I need to submit to you. So we would go into situations. I had been in a number of exorcisms prior to serving with Jeff. But I got to be honest, Jeff was a big guns because he was a prophetic leader. That was his specialty. So he took the lead in any exorcisms. He had far more experience than I had in that area. So,
yeah, I was just going to say too, I don't know how this principle could apply, but I'm going to share it. Maybe you can see if there is a place for this, because it kind of has to do with how you started out the whole conversation of defining what your outlook is as far as time.
Yeah.
One of my partners right now is Jimbo Balaam. He's a former church planner, and he runs a thing called the Auto Detailing Podcast. He's an auto detailer, and he and I have teamed up together a couple of different times to bring projects and basically marketing product to detailers. And last year in May, we were like, hey, I just reached out to him like, hey, look, man, you've got a podcast. You've got a market here. I've got marketing. I can teach these guys how to market their business. Let's put on a live event and we're going to sell a product at it. And, we put together a product and we were going to sell it at it. And so because I've got the experience of working with partners, I sent an email. I go, look, this is the way it needs to be. And I go, we can do a 50-50, but just so you know, 5% comes off the top for the merchant account fee. Any expenses we got comes out of that. Any expenses you incur, I incur, whatever. If we're going to be spending a bunch of money, we need to let the other person know this is what we're spending it on. But this was kind of the key thing is I said, okay, and this agreement that we're entering into is solely for this one event and product. We may not like working together. I'm a tough person to work with, and I know I'm a tough person to work with. So, we're going to test the waters with this, but you get to leave with whatever you brought in. I get to leave with whatever I brought in. Go on about our merry little ways. We don't owe each other anything going forward. And let's just, see how this works. And it worked well because he and I didn't have any problems. He basically said the same thing, kind of like what you did. And he was like, hey, look, I want to be the final voice on anything that has to do with detailing because I understand that. And I'm like, dude, that's cool because you're right. I have no clue about how to detail a car. I know how to call you up and say, get over here and detail my car. Like that's about all the experience I got in that, right? But it led to where we were able to then this year do another project together, which is a much more long-term project because we had already worked together. We'd worked together on a small thing and we were able to then, work together on a much larger, bigger project and, so far haven't butted heads or anything like that. So I don't know if that's anything that you can do in the church planning world, but I just thought I'd share that as that was one thing that I like to do. I like to do small little things.
Definitely.
Let's make sure it works before.
Definitely, man. Here's why that duration question is important, because you might just be like, hey, I'll be there the first 6 months or first year to help you get your launch off the ground. It might develop into something because you really liked being together, but you never know. I mean, but having a time limit also means that there might be certain things that, like when I counseled a guy recently, I said, look, there might be certain things that you're willing to put up with when you ask these questions, simply because you're only going to be there for a year, rather than this is the rest of my life. Like, let's say the guy has views on communion that you don't hold. Like, my view on communion is anyone can take it, saved or unsaved, because there's literally not a verse in the Bible that says that unsaved people can't take communion. We've made that up from Paul's deal where he says, hey, some of you eat, you eat it before the other people get there. That's why you've gotten sick or fallen asleep. And then he says, whoever eats or drinks in an unworthy manner, therefore, eats and drinks to his own condemnation. We say, oh, that means, for some reason, we've interpreted that as you must be saved to take communion. And yet, in church history, multiple people have gotten saved at communion. It's the embodiment of the gospel, the death and resurrection of Jesus. So anyways, all that to say, I changed my view on that. And we did a whole podcast on this.
Wait. What?
But would I have a hard time with a guy that I'm serving a little bit of time with who didn't believe that, who believed, no, it's only for believers. Hey, if I'm going to be here for a year, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll put up with that. And that comes down to the next question, which is questions on theology. I would say if a guy weren't grace-based, it weren't all about the grace of God, I can't serve with him. But at the same time, if he's antinomian, where it's so much about the grace that he's dropping F-bombs, behind the scenes and stuff like that, I'm going to find that difficult, because I'm going to see, well, you wouldn't do that with other people. You're just a double standard of holiness. And these are, but holiness is important to me. I'm all grace. And this is where I always freak out, reform people, because I hold to the belief that if I'm not both convincing people I'm an antinomian and a legalist, I'm not writing the gospel balance correctly, right? And my mentor taught me that years ago. If you're not at the same time being accused, like Jesus, of being a legalist and an antinomian, then you got a problem, because Jesus is like, not one jot or tittle from the law is going to pass away. I uphold the law, and yet at the same time, he's scandalizing things. So I think you need to ride that middle balance. But I want to hear a guy, if he's not all about grace, on the main things, it's the main things. If I hear a guy and he's, oh, Rob Bell's the best thing on the world, I know I can't serve with him. In fact, back when I ran New Breed, we had a guy try to join who, was so liberal, and he was the coolest dude. We loved him. But I just told him, I said, here's the deal. Let's just put it this way. I go to your church. I preach on hell. I empty your church. I go, then you come to my church. You preach that there is no hell. You empty my church, because I got a bunch of people that, they're one step away from it. So look, I get, you're a good dude and you're trying to do your thing, but we can't walk together, man. Like these things right here that you're talking about, they're big enough to where there is no common ground for us other than Jesus. But I'm not even sure if you think Jesus is the only way to heaven. So this is a gospel issue. We kind of gotta just acknowledge that this is a reality.
So would you say, hey, let's walk together for 3 months?
No, on those things.
No. I mean, like, let's say you don't know this yet, right?
Yeah.
How do you jump in, right? How do you jump in bed together? How do you
have those multiple conversations over meals and cups of coffee? And you don't do this in one night. You've got to talk and you got to say, hey, tonight when we get together, let's talk over what we believe. I'll give you the rundown of all the stuff that's important to me theologically, and you do the same. And then you do it as couples. you'll hear the real stuff come out when you got the spouses in there.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I say always with spouses, because if you want truth, you get the spouses there too. Right? Because the spouse will be like, well, but you don't really believe that, you see what I'm saying? Like it'll come out when the spouse is there. There's no messing around. Right? So because I suppose you could put up a front. I don't know why someone would want to do that, but also views on the Holy Spirit. That's a really important one. What are your views on the Spirit? Because if I'm serving with someone who is a cessationist, does not believe the gifts operate today, then that's a big one too, because that means I can't lay hands on people and pray for healing. There's certain things that they're going to think practically should not be done. Not even aren't useful or beneficial, but should not, that I'm actually misleading people. So those things are important. Questions like, who's going to get paid if we serve together? You going to get paid or am I going to get paid? So when Charlie and I served together, I was very upfront. Hey, I will get paid because I'm a missionary. I've come back from the field. This is how it wasn't a full-time salary. You were the treasurer, but it was a little bit of money, and I got paid because Charlie had a full-time job. What I did offer to Charlie was, if you want to quit your job and you want to put yourself in the same jeopardy that I'm in every month, in other words, the risk that I'm in financially, then I'll share the money with you, 50-50, right? And I think that's a valid point. And Charlie was really good at it. Charlie would always say, he couldn't argue because he was like, he got it. He's like, hey man, look, I would not be willing to leave my job for that amount of money. And therefore, man, you deserve every penny of that. And at a certain point, we did start talking about paying him a little bit, just just out of principle. But in the beginning, we couldn't afford that, so that was, and then by that time he had moved on. And to this day, Charlie has split because both he and his co-planter have full-time jobs, but they split a little bit. They get a little bit each. And those are questions you just have to have. But I think it's fair for the guy who's kind of putting his family and his finances on the line, for that guy to be the guy that makes some money. And I think you gotta be able to articulate that, hey, look, I'm earning the right to get paid here because I'm taking peanuts. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
If you're willing to do that, to me, you're willing to get that money. So, and Paul talks about stuff like that. Sometimes Paul argues from his right based on the hardship that he was willing to put up with, for the gospel. He kind of argues, that he's earned, the right to be heard or the right to be listened to. And I think we do well to sometimes keep that in mind. Go back and read 2 Corinthians. That was the book of the Bible that kind of helped me understand that. What are the roles and responsibilities? Things like, who's going to preach? How often? Are you going to share the pulpit? Is it going to be a one-man show? Are you going to rotate in? Who's going to do the counseling? Are you going to do all the grotty bits and he's going to do all the glory bits? And I hate to put it in those terms because being in the pulpit should never be about glory. But if a guy's like, you do all the grotty bits and I'm going to be in the pulpit, it is all about glory, right? It is. That's a good indicator that, okay, this guy wants all the limelight. He doesn't actually want to do the serving. He who's the greatest servant is the first among you, but this guy don't want to serve at all, but he still wants to be the first.
I would just like to say that I would love to be the counselor because I just want to take off my glasses, look at you and go, suck it up, buttercup.
Pete had his glasses on today and he was doing the funniest stuff, but you can do the Bob Newhart counseling. Have you seen that skit on Saturday Night Live?
The one where he goes, stop it.
Just stop it.
I can guarantee you it won't take us more than 5 minutes and it's just $5. Okay. I think I can afford that. Here you go. All that stuff. Stop it. That was such a great
Stop
skit.
it right now. What?
See, I cannot tell you how many times people have come into this room and they've sat right there. I've given that advice and they say that exact same thing as you. What do you mean by that? What part of stop it do you not understand?
I love it, man. So these are all questions. Who's going to do the visiting? On and on and on. You got to talk about childcare, protecting kids. I mean, the list goes on, financial integrity, but you have to you have to come up with a list. But like I said, you do it in bite-sized chunks, and we're out of time, but you literally have to put these things off on multiple meetings. You can't hit this all on one night. But plus, you're building a relationship. If you're going to serve with this person, it's not a hardship to stretch it out, over a few months, having really get to know yous, and you'll pick up on the things. That's why Paul said, some men's sins go clearly before them. Other men's sins, they trail behind. And so it takes time. I find, honestly, like if there's character flaws that aren't evident at first, they're going to come out within 6 months. 6 months is a really good kind of touch point for, like you said, like when you jump in, how do you know? So putting a limit on it, like maybe a year, it might be that something gets raised in the guy's marriage or whatever. And you're like, hey, these things, we need to talk about this. And that might be healing for that leader, because maybe that leader's never been in a relationship of accountability before. And that's going to be really helpful. And I've seen that work really, really well in some of the guys in New Breed, where they're on team leaderships, and that's exactly what happens. But at the same time, if I don't remember what I was going to say from there, and it's time to end anyway. So, so hey, Pete, if you're doing all these things and you're working out your roles and responsibilities, obviously you can't do the finances and do all the visiting and do all the preaching, right?
Well, besides the fact that you don't want me anywhere touching your finances on any level whatsoever, for fear that
why would that be, Pete?
For fear that your merchant account might be turned off because of a smart aleck comment you make.
When the merchant account representative was copied on the email, you mean?
I'm just saying you don't want me anywhere involved with your finances. I think you should not be including Pete Mitchell in on emails that have nothing to do with him.
That's now a new rule at Refuge Long Beach, just so you know.
Hey, that'll be the last time they make that mistake. But for everyone else, there's simplifiedchurch.com.
What does simplifiedchurch.com do,
Simplified
Pete?
Church makes your life simple. And believe me, when you have Pete Mitchell touching your stuff, you need simple.
All right. Well, hey, cool, guys. Thanks for joining us today. Sorry that I couldn't get my mic working, but it'll be there for next time. But this has been the Church Planter Podcast, reminding you, if you want to reach the ones no one's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
Hi, I'm Scott Blair, church planter. If you are anything like I used to be, you probably woke up feeling alone and somewhat isolated today, wondering to yourself, why isn't there just one place that I can go to discuss the things I really care about, like bear attacks, Sir Mix-a-Lot, Game of Thrones, and even Christology? Well, I'm here to tell you such a place now exists. This is not make-believe. I would not joke about a thing like this. Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones have created such a place. No. It's not heaven. They didn't create that. But it's the next best thing, the Bivo Ministry Inner Circle.
BivoInnerCircle.com.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.